Hey Angie, how's it going? Welcome back.
Hi, Matt. It's going really well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm ready for another episode. We're gonna get right into it pretty quickly here. But today we are talking all about text messaging, and I know it's in marketing in general it's big, but especially in schools, especially here in our school, it's something we talk about a lot. Should text messaging be part of our marketing the way that drip emails are? Should they be reminders for things that people are doing? I think it's and I'm seeing a lot of other schools talking about that too.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions around, to text or not to text, or how often to text. How many texts are too many texts for a parent to receive? I mean, as a prospective parent, I love getting text reminders. It's just my personal preference, and I think a lot of millennials are in the same boat. But there needs to be a balance, and I think schools need to find the right technology as well as that balance. And so we're hoping this episode will shed a little bit of light on some trends and things that are happening in the school space. And hopefully, some school marketers will take some tips and tricks with them.
Definitely. I'll be taking notes for sure.
So, our guest that we're going to be speaking with today is Corey Pudhorodsky. He's currently the general manager of the K-12 business division at Community Brands, serving more than 2,500 private and independent schools in the United States. A common theme throughout Corey's career has been enabling individuals to connect via technology to help improve their organizations and the world. So, we'll go right into our conversation with Corey.
Hey, Corey, thank you so much for joining us. It's awesome to have you here on the Upgrade School Marketing Podcast.
Thank you. I've been excited to join you.
Yeah. I was wondering, just to kick things off, I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and your work at Community Brands.
Great. My name is Corey Pudhorodsky. I've been with Community Brands for about a year and a half now. Community Brands' mission is to serve nonprofit schools and associations to help them do their work better through technology. And I'm the general manager of our K-12 line of business here in the United States. General manager, I like to casually say, my job is to make sure all the trains arrive on time. And so what I'm really working to do is enable the team at Community Brands to serve the schools that we work with, whether it's through the sales and marketing efforts that we have to help the broader schools understand what our solutions do, whether it's our customer success services and support teams to support our existing customers, or our product and our R&D team, and looking at what else we need to do to be able to build technology solutions for K-12 schools. We like to casually say we're trying to help out schools with everything from admit to accounting, and so the full life cycle of what students, families, and administrators need at independent schools in the United States.
Community Brands does so much. I feel like I've seen you guys, your products around in the space, obviously, for quite some time. Today, we're so interested in learning more about text messaging and how that obviously fits into this journey that you speak of from beginning through the end. So can you speak a little bit to how text messaging is playing a role throughout that process? And I'm especially interested in the prospective parent search journey and how text messaging plays a role there as well.
Yep. Yeah, text messaging, again, as people's communications preferences have changed. Text messages have become increasingly important in terms of how you're using them to communicate with your prospective families. SMS messages, text messages are a great way to be able to engage people in the moment and also cut through a lot of the noise that they might be getting through other email marketing channels or other direct mail channels that you might also be using in order to connect with prospective parents. And the reason why text messages can be so effective is 98% of text messages are being opened by people within with the total amount of messages that they receive. So virtually every single message that a parent receives, they're going to read at some point. And 60% of those messages are read within the first 2 minutes that they're received. And so when you think about that with a text message, you're able to get a message to somebody that you know they're going to read immediately. Now, with that, especially when you're building up that relationship, it's important that schools are thinking about, they opt in that when somebody gives you their phone number, they're trusting that you're going to send them messages that they want to receive. And so you have to build up that trust with them to prevent them from unsubscribing and losing that chance to use that channel to communicate with them effectively. The mobile phone number should be one of the first fields that you're accepting, during the discovery process. And so as soon as you've gotten an initial inquiry, it should be, first name, last name, phone number is what I would recommend you collect first, then email address, of course. But then moving on from there, what you should also think about is, asking, how would you like us to communicate? Do you want only urgent messages around events that are coming up? Would you like to get updates in terms of what's happening in the school to aid you in getting some of the news of what's happening? Or would you like to, only get the messages that are in response to transactions that you're completing, whether it's the completion of an application or whether it's, the confirmation that a deposit or a payment has been made? Go ahead,
At what
Angie.
stage are you asking all of these preferred, communication methods? Is that initial inquiry form when a prospective family kind of first inquires with a school, or are these preferences done a different way over email? Or at what stage do you recommend, the admissions person or the marketing person gets all this information from that prospective family?
Some of that is dependent on the technology that you're using. And so different SMS and text messaging platforms will have different ways that you can set those preferences, whether it be through interaction within the text messages and the platform, or whether it be through, forms that you're having the parent fill out that you're then using to update preferences within, another CRM or admission management, suite.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I would say, think about it from what your tools can do. But then the other thing is to, remember that you're building up that relationship. And so you don't want to ask too many questions until you've gotten that trust and that familiarity with the families.
I feel like in the marketing side of things, it makes a lot of sense. You hear it in like the social media side, a lot of like putting all your eggs into one basket, like 10 years ago, everybody was all in on Facebook and that's where everything was. And then all of a sudden Facebook shifts the way that you reach your audience, and they're trying to get you to pay for ads now to reach their same audience, even people that are following you. And you now are kind of in a tough spot because you have committed so hard to one channel of that's where you're putting things out. And I feel like for schools now to relate that to outward messaging, like email, a lot of schools have gotten over the years into drip campaigns and have gotten some sort of the ability to do email and are really all in on that as your way of doing that. But then, Gmail changes the way that they filter their promotions folder, and your emails are now getting put into promotions, which means they are not seen. You are all of a sudden everything that you put into now, and this is just something, as a communications director that I worry about sometimes, is we have gone really big into email, into automated emails, into doing this. And then you look back and one, it's hard to track because of iPhone updates. It's hard to see what is opened and what is read, and then you're at the mercy of these email clients and they change what they do. So I think to me, like that sort of balance of having another way that is a, proven way that you're going to get a message to people, they're going to open text messages, to me feels like a really nice way for somebody in my job to balance out what you're doing and add a little safety to it, because you're now hitting people in a few different ways. So
yeah, I think, Matt, you hit upon one of the key points, which is to make sure you're using the communication channel for what it's best suited for, and to also think about the holistic messages that the parent might be receiving from the school, whether it be email, text messages, social media, or increasingly, schools are using apps or other ways to be able to get like messages directly to schools. So whether that be through the admission and discovery process, through common admissions apps like what we have with Ravenna, which can be a portal to be able to help schools find help families find schools that are within their areas and apply to them, right? With something like that, then you should say, okay, if they've initially discovered the school, we can use a text message to confirm that they've submitted their inquiry, but we should follow up with an email, which is a longer form format that can have like a summary of the instructions and the process or more details on the school. we should make sure that our social media posts are reflecting the same types of messages that are going out through our email, and maybe even pointing to some of the blog posts or the articles or things that schools might be publishing via some of the other channels. Text messages can be great for that, because when somebody's in a grocery line, they get a message, they can click it up and glance at that article to spend that 2 or 3 minutes that they won't normally would have been reading some other piece of news to learn more about your schools.
A little bit of a tangent. Are Corey and Angie, are you fans of The Office? Did you watch The Office?
Yes.
Yeah.
You did. Do you remember when Ryan invented the woof? Was that his like messaging thing where you get you send a message in it, and in one it text messages you, it calls you, it sends you an email, it like sends a fax and is printing out while you're doing it. So one of my fears, I get that image in my head sometimes when I think of all the different ways, and we just met with admissions to talk about the different email drip campaigns we have and making sure that we're not overlapping ones. So if somebody registers for open house and books a tour and inquires, they're not getting 3 emails a day about all these things. And, we're not recreating Ryan's woof for families where they're just, getting notifications nonstop and we're annoying people and they're unsubscribing. So is there any way that when you incorporate text messaging as an additional thing to what you're doing, that you can sort of ensure or balance out to make sure you're not over messaging people because you want to get them on email and you want to get them on text? How do you make sure that that doesn't happen?
Yeah, it is a challenge. And I think for resource constrained schools and busy marketers and communication specialists, the challenge there is that you're often going to be the human aggregator for a lot of different requests that are coming in from the schools on desired messages to get out to either prospective or existing families. And so you have to take that view of the family centric perspective of what they're going to be receiving if you were to say yes to every single request. There are technology solutions that can stagger that in a way that it makes sure that if they've received X number of messages, then suppress them from those messages. Particularly email marketing has been doing that for years, of course. With text messaging, I think the way that we think about it at Community Brands is being able to tag with attributes the preference of the family in the systems that we use for SMS messaging. And so the ability to be able to annotate that family's preferences and then send based off of those preferences. And then, of course, they can always change it through their family portal where they can log in and make adjustments if they feel like it's too noisy or they're not getting enough.
I am particularly interested in data. I'm kind of a data geek. I'm one of those marketers that will look at not just open rates for email, but scroll rates, where did they click? Let's get UTM parameters on so we can see in analytics to see what pages they viewed after they opened that email. So I'm into data. And when it comes to text messaging, what kind of data points should marketers be looking at to determine if the campaign is successful or not?
Yep. So I mentioned earlier, that text messages, SMS messages have an extremely high open rate, but the reality is that as a marketer, you can't measure that directly because you're not getting read responses from the carriers or from the messages themselves. But there are a couple things that you can do that will give you still some valuable feedback data when you're sending these messages. One is to make sure that, again, you're using the channel for the right type of messaging. And so if you're sending a unique piece of message of information to the family, and then you've gotten that feedback that they've completed the action or that they've acknowledged the receipt through some other form, then you know that message was effective. Links in messages can still use. You can use the tracking codes and short URLs to embed the other metrics that you can use to be able to indicate if the person clicked on the link, then you know that they've received it. And then you can use your normal web marketing tools to be able to measure, time on page or, what the drop off rate is once they've gone to that page. The things that you would do if you were using, other channels to be able to direct them to those places. monitor very closely your subscribe rates as well, because if you've sent a message and you've immediately had 10% of your prospective parents asked to unsubscribe, that message might be something that you might not want to repeat in the future.
Yeah, that makes sense. Great. I love that you can track all of that through the text messaging platform as well, because I think not every marketing person has the time to dive into things like Google Analytics and click-through rates and things like that. So sometimes you just simply need to look at the response for that particular goal or call to action for that text message. Would you say it's a fairly easy thing to log into and check out? Like, how does that data kind of feed back to the school marketer?
So, with community brands, we have a set of form building tools that will allow you to be able to direct, parents or prospective parents to forms to be able to fill out. And so that would be, multi-step forms is a first step to use, because if you get the initial information after you've gotten the action, then even if they don't complete the form, you can either follow up with another text message of like, hey, it looks like you started this process but didn't finish it, right? And so that's another way that you can use that immediacy of SMS messages to get in touch with them. And then I think it's another place where some of those tagging and attributes of the families can allow you to be able to segment based off of people that have gotten one message but not completed other steps in the admission or enrollment process.
Yeah, that's great. So using that logic that is similar to setting up kind of an advanced kind of email marketing flow is definitely sounds like the recommendation for text messaging as well. You really want to use that logic and use those segments and interests to really come up with a campaign that fits those goals for the most success.
Yeah, it is. And then again, thinking about it, complementary against, you shouldn't give up on email completely, even though it has gotten increasingly challenging to cut through some of the noise with email. It's still a very effective and complementary tool for connecting with parents.
So for a school that has not done any text messaging in their like outward marketing, is there like a first step? Like, what is something that you would say to a school to say, because I feel like it can get overwhelming. Again, schools with small staffs and limited resources. So you start to get into, different branches and attributes and all that. Is there something that you think is just like the most effective, that if you were just to start something and pilot something this year, like you should try this?
Yeah, well, I would encourage the school to first ask themselves, like, what's the tone or the voice that we want to have on text messages, and is it the same as what we're going to be using in the other communication that we're already using with our families? Then I think it's a matter of like coming back and saying, okay, let's start with some of the things that we know are the gaps within the processes that we already have. So if we see that we're having a large number of, I think you mentioned it before, Angie, like for an open house or for some sort of like appointment, like interview appointment, if we know that we've got a high attrition rate where people are no-showing for some of those events, maybe that's a place to experiment with text messages first through your admissions platform to be able to send out those reminders. If you don't have text messages integrated into the product that you're currently using, I would say either look for one. We not to pitch our solutions too hard, but we do have solutions that have that integrated into our suite at community brands. Or just think about, is the tool that you're using, does it accept imports where you can easily export that data and get it into the text messaging tool that you're using? So long story short, I would say look at where you have some gaps in your current life cycle and try to fill those gaps with text messages if there is a need for that immediacy in the communication.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes those kind of lower, like a little bit lower stakes trial of something like a new technology, especially when automated drip campaigns were new, just putting together a very simple, I think our first one was maybe 3 emails, but then being able to just try that out and show our admissions team, like, here's what it looks like and here's how it's working, and wow, families are responding now to emails that are being sent out like automatically, which is mind-blowing at the time. But just to be able to see that, I think then that allowed us to then take the next step and then take the next step and then take, and go. Because I think sometimes it's just kind of getting the proof of seeing how it's working and what it does is powerful, and you'll learn from it, and you might change some things, but it also just allows you to kind of take that next step. And on that same note, go ahead.
Well, one very important and tactical tip, and it seems simple, but some people often forget it, and it can be tragic. Identify yourself in the first text message that you send to families. People are busy, and they might forget that they've opted in to receive messages, and so that first message is so critical, because if they've forgotten that they opted in to receive that message, the first thing they're going to do is say stop or unsubscribe, or they're going to block you there. And so just be very clear in your first message, brief and clear around why you are messaging them, and then you've opened the door for the next set of messages that are going to come in.
That's such a great tip, because I know I certainly have gotten those text messages, and they'll use an acronym sometimes, and I didn't realize that was the name of my optometrist office. So I'm like, what is this? So that's great. So introduce yourself, and don't just use your school's acronym or nickname, perhaps.
And I don't know, so we started doing this because we had that same thought. We use them now for like notifications of school cancellations and late starts and things like that. We started just putting the start of so we're Chapel Hill Chauncey Hall School, CHCH. And these are just to current families, but we still start every single message with CHCH notice and follow up, because our thought was, if they don't add you, they don't add you to their phone book, or they reset their message, whatever happens, even if you introduce yourself initially, now you're sending a message 3 months later and they don't remember what this number is. So I don't know, is that something that is recommended for schools, or what do you think about that?
I've seen it work both ways. If I'm being completely honest, I don't know if I have like the stats or a strong opinion on if that is considered a best practice or has been tested out. I can say my experience as a parent myself, I like being able to scan through a set of messages and easily be able to identify it, especially when, short codes can be very similar in terms of where the messages might be getting sent from when you're using third-party services.
Yeah. One thing that I actually I didn't realize is in short codes and text messaging is that it is the same code is used for multiple organizations. So it turned out that our school uses the same service as the local public school. So our text messages come from the same phone number. So because it uses a short 5-digit code. So we really confused a few on-campus families who are here. It's a boarding school. So families who work here, but also have a student in the local public schools, because the messages are coming from the same phone number. So again, I forgot, but that's another reason why we start all of our messages with, this is who we are. So I think this is just kind of closing it up here, but are there any wins or losses that you would say you've witnessed, seen with schools in text messaging, things to, really, kick you off in the right direction, or things to really avoid?
When you're selecting a tool, make sure you're working with one that is certified with carriers and that will have verified delivery to the recipients. Carriers have gotten much more stringent in terms of what they let through into their system. And so there used to be a lot of ways to get shortcuts to be able to send text messages to individual phone numbers. You could email a phone number back in the past, and you still can. In some cases, it might get delivered, but the phone number at Verizon dot something something or at AT&T, and that would get through as a text message. Carriers have really started to shut that down because of the spam and unpermissioned messages that have been getting sent out, that I'm sure everybody listening and watching has experienced themselves. And so with that, that's why using a service that is built and verified with the carriers, or uses a platform that is a third party to have the delivery, I would just encourage everyone to make sure they're not shortcutting it too much to get the cheapest, freest version to be able to send text messages out to their families.
Yeah, that makes
And then
sense.
aside from that, I think everything else we talked about before, start simple, identify yourself, and make sure you're using the channel for what it's designed for, I think is the kind of closing thoughts that I have in the conversation.
It's
Great,
amazing,
very
Corey.
helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Corey. I think really there's also an article too that Community Brands put out. We'll put in the show notes. That is about SMS for schools and involves communicating with your current audience, with prospective families, using it as part of your fundraising effort. So we'll make sure that we link that in there as well. And is there any other ways people can see what you're putting out, or what connect with Community Brands? Where can people check you out?
Yeah, and everyone can go to communitybrands.com, and then we serve associations, nonprofits, and schools. And so on the top navigation, you'll be able to find the header that has all of our solutions that serve schools. We are constantly, building more features and more solutions within our current base. And this week is an exciting week for us. We just acquired, a new solution within the family with Big SIS, Big SIS, another solution that has some of these communication tools that we've talked about today built in. We're excited to be able to continue to help serve schools. So that's the best way to get in touch with me or the solutions that Community Brands offers.
Awesome.
That's great.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Corey. I hope we
you.
can get you back on, and we'll talk again about one of the other parts of Community Brands for sure.
Grateful for the opportunity to join you all today.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Corey. Right. Take care.
Thank you again to Corey for coming by and taking the time to talk with us all about technology and text messaging. And I know after that interview, I actually had a meeting with our admissions team, and that immediately came right up. We started talking about how we can implement it, whether it's part of reminding people about open houses that they register for, or for tours that they book. So that immediately rose up into something that we're planning right now. So thank you to Corey for making that rise up.
Great. Yeah, that was an excellent conversation. I definitely have a few schools that I'm working with that I'm going to share this with. These are such topical questions that schools have right now around texting. So that was
awesome.
great.
And then so we're going to go to our A+ school. Angie, you're on A+ school of the week here.
Yes, I have one. This week's A+ goes out to Chapel Hill Chauncey Hall.
Oh man.
I just love the video that you guys put out. It's called Thankful for CHCH Teachers. And it's just this great testimonial that a parent provided the school with, and all of the faculty and administration of the school is taking turns reading bits of that letter. And you guys should check it out on YouTube. So great job with that, Matt, and to the CHCH team.
Thank you. Yeah. That's been out, going on the rounds of social media and email and everything for a little while. So I appreciate that. That's really nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
We won't make that a regular thing that we.
This will be the only A+ for you.
Okay,
this year.
good.
Good. How was it creating that video, and how did that come about?
Yeah. So it was very organic, I guess would be the best way to say. Is a parent actually wrote an email to our teachers at the end of the school year last year, and just sent it to a group of teachers, just thanking them for changing their daughter's life and all the ways that they had done it. And our head of school, Dr. Conrad, read it out loud at our end of year meeting, and everybody was emotional and doing all that. And as a marketing person, when I see everybody getting emotional, I tune in to say what's going on. So so I reached out to the parent and just said, is there, would it be a possibility to use this and to, make this more public? And we worked back and forth. We took out a lot of identifying things of who the person was. And then, it turned out to be really one of the most straightforward, simple videos ever to make, because I sat outside of the dining hall with a script of all the email, and had teachers just read line by line, and went through and edited that together. So it was pretty genuine, and just a real email read by teachers. And I think the reaction from from people so far has been really great to see, like alumni coming out saying, you know, how much they love their teacher. So it turned into a really great campaign around Thanksgiving and allowing people to kind of share those stories too.
Yeah, that's great. That's such a beautiful piece. And I definitely recommend everybody check it out. Oh, we'll leave a link in the podcast notes.
I can get the link for sure.
Great.
Well, thank you, Angie. That's very nice.
Great job.
And thank everybody for listening again. And make sure to follow on LinkedIn, where we'll be posting all of our things and some little nuggets from the episode. And we will see you next time.